While not all tie agents regularly time shift, once in situ, toe agents mostly only travel through time the natural way, slowly upwards. Tie has only one more agent below me, Alex, whose responsibilities are from 1897 downwards, while the next agent up the line takes over from me from 2018. It is worth noting that in theory I could travel up range past 2018, but like all tie agents, I have lockouts on my computer that won't let me shift any further. It's mostly to avoid future knowledge, but I've always suspected there's also an element of keeping us focused on the past. So, if I want to go up any further, I could go up as far as 2018, then would have to wait around until the natural passage of time took me the rest of the way. As a tow agent, Malcolm doesn't have that lockout and can travel up range, something he only does when he needs to speak to the tie agents above me. His period of responsibility is all the way from 2117 down to what we call the upper wall. The upper wall is the furthest point back in time that anyone from the top of time can reach, even with acclimatization stops. Since the top of time keeps moving forwards, so does the upper wall, at a steady 1 second per second rate. Currently, the upper wall is creeping its way slowly up the 1800s, and eventually the 20th century will be unreachable from the top of time. The lower wall is a bit more theoretical. If somebody from the 1800s were to be sent back by someone from the top of time, they could, in theory, go back about as far as 1000 BC, but the combined acclimatization stops would take relative decades, so between aging and the inherent dangers of the past, it's very unlikely a 19th century traveller would even make it as far as the time of Christ. So the upper wall represents really what's regarded as the effective limits of time travel. Of course, one of the practical effects of this is that Malcolm's future is, from my perspective, in the past. I remember a time travel film once where a character remarked, "This time travel will fry your brain like an egg," or something to that effect. It's not too far off the truth. To try and keep things manageable and cut down on the risk of personal paradox, we operate a system called parallel time. Basically, it means that if the last time I travelled to see Malcolm was 3 days ago from my perspective, if I need to go down to see him again, then I travel to a point 3 days after that last occasion, so that the same length of time has passed for him too. The same is true when I meet my Thai colleagues. It's slightly clunky, and occasionally we have to meet out of order or even have to dodge round the Thai agents who preceded us, but it more or less works. By the 1990s, Malcolm is never hard to find in a crowd. With his tweed jacket, shirt, bow tie, short trimmed beard, he looks and sounds and speaks like something out of the 1930s. Apparently he liked the decade so much he has yet to move on from it. Every so often he gets taken as a Doctor Who fan. The irony of that is not lost on either of us. When I step into the small coffee shop near Pembroke College, he is sitting in a back corner reading from a thick hardback book. A cup of tea steams on the table, and beside it his fob watch lies open. He looks up as I approach. Hanging onto the beard is probably a good idea as it tones his face down a bit. Everyone from the top that I've ever met who isn't wearing a false flesh concealment is almost stunningly attractive. With the beard, Malcolm is merely devastatingly handsome, instead of downright underwear moistening, and I say that as a happily married man. Certainly gets plenty of offers from both sexes, although I get the impression that at the top, sexuality doesn't fit particularly neatly into any of the categories that we here have. "You're right on time, old fellow," he says, closing the book and checking his watch. "A time traveller is never late," I reply after taking a glance at his book. "Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to." "Discovering Lord of the Rings?" "Oh, this? It's a first edition signed by the author. Sadly, but obviously, I was never able to meet him. Reread rather than a discovery. How did you get the book, I ask. I'm not really suggesting anything, or to be honest, especially interested. But, given that I'm essentially a policeman, I suppose any question inherently sounds accusing. Malcolm smiles. The answer to the old question of who watches the watcher is that we watch each other. The book rather fell out of vogue in the next few centuries, and by my time, no full copy still existed. It was included in a lost literature recovery process. Several were recovered from this century, more than were actually needed. One of your predecessors gave me this copy. He rescued it from a house fire in the 1960s. So, destroyed as far as history is concerned, I reply as I sit down. It tends to be the way we procure a lot of things, by taking them from points in time where, as far as the rest of the universe was concerned, they were lost.